He had been sitting in the corner of the quiet cafe for nearly an hour, cradling his coffee cup between his hands, the steam fogging up his glasses as he stared absent-mindedly at his laptop screen. Outside, winter had settled into the city streets, coating the sidewalks in a thin layer of ice that glimmered under the muted glow of streetlights. Inside, the cafe hummed with the soft buzz of conversations and the clatter of cups, but he felt disconnected from it all. Being a single dad wasn't easy. Some days, it felt like the weight of the world had been handed to him on a silver tray, and the tray was too heavy to lift. He had learned to compartmentalize his grief, his exhaustion, and the loneliness that clung to him, but today, even the routine of checking emails and scrolling through messages felt hollow. His daughter had gone to her ballet class, his apartment felt unbearably quiet, and the early winter sun cast long shadows across the tables, emphasizing the emptiness he carried. That's when he noticed her. She wasn't like anyone he had seen before, not in the usual ways people notice strangers. She had the kind of presence that seemed to bend the light around her, softening the edges of the harsh cafe interior. Her hair was dark and pulled back in a simple braid, but it was her eyes that caught him first. Deep, hesitant, and yet filled with a spark of resilience he couldn't look away from. She approached him slowly, a cautious smile playing at the corners of her lips, and then, as if summoning courage from some secret well, she asked, "Can I sit here?" Her voice was quiet but clear, and it carried a note of vulnerability that made him pause. He looked at the chair across from him and then back at her. There was something fragile about her, something unspoken, like she was carrying a weight of her own, just as he was. And then he saw it, the crutch propped carefully beside her chair, and the leg that ended just below the knee. He hadn't noticed at first, but now it was impossible to ignore. His mind raced for the right words, unsure whether to treat her like a normal stranger or with the awkward caution people often reserved for someone visibly different. He didn't want to pity her. He never wanted to pity anyone. "Of course," he said finally, gesturing toward the empty chair. He forced a smile, hoping it looked natural, though inside he felt a swirl of emotions he couldn't name. She smiled back, a tiny, grateful tilt of her lips, and lowered herself into the seat with a careful grace that made him feel simultaneously protective and embarrassed for thinking about her at all. She had that look of someone who had learned to navigate the world on her own terms, someone who had faced challenges and refused to let them define her entirely. There was bravery there, and he couldn't help but admire it, even as he tried not to let his own thoughts get tangled up in her presence. For a few moments, they sat in silence, the background noise of the cafe filling the space between them. He stole glances at her from the corner of his eye. She had chosen a seat in the sunlight, and the light illuminated her face, revealing a complexion both delicate and strong, like porcelain that had survived a storm. She was fidgeting slightly with her hands, clasping them together on her lap, and he noticed the nervous way her shoulders tensed. He wondered what brought her here, to this cafe, on this particular morning. Was it chance, or had she been searching for something she couldn't yet name? Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope I'm not disturbing you." There was a quiver in her words, an uncertainty that made him look up sharply. He shook his head, more firmly than he intended. "No, not at all. You're not disturbing me." He meant it, though his voice carried a rasp of something he couldn't quite hide. Years of fatigue, sleepless nights, and moments where he had doubted his own ability to keep going. Yet, sitting here with her, listening to her quiet honesty, he felt something shift. Something in the air seemed to acknowledge the fragile connection forming between two people who hadn't expected to meet. I don't usually go out," she admitted, glancing down at the floor. There was a subtle defensiveness in her tone, as if she had anticipated judgment and had practiced shielding herself from it. "I mean, I'm used to people staring or saying things they think are helpful, but really aren't." Her gaze flicked up to his, and he saw a flicker of hope mingled with fear. He realized then that he was facing someone who had built walls around herself, walls that only the right person could breach. He wanted to be that person. Not out of heroism, but because her presence demanded kindness, demanded attention. "People can be thoughtless," he said softly, choosing his words carefully. "I get it. I don't usually say much to strangers, either. I mean, look at me, sitting here, talking to no one, pretending like I have it all together." He let out a small, rueful laugh, and to his surprise, she laughed too, a brief, delicate sound that made him feel lighter than he had in weeks. It was an oddly intimate moment, the kind that seemed impossible to manufacture, the kind that could only exist when two lives collided unexpectedly and recognized something familiar in each other. I think, sometimes it helps, though, she murmured, her fingers tightening slightly on the crutch. Talking, even if it's just to someone you've never met. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of someone who had lived through quiet suffering and learned to survive alone. He nodded, feeling the truth of it seep into him. He had been surviving, yes, but was he really living? Sitting here with her, sharing this tiny, fragile connection, he realized that perhaps there was more to life than getting through each day. Perhaps there was courage in vulnerability, in allowing someone else to see you as you were, flaws and all. He leaned back slightly, letting the chair creak under him, and studied her face more closely. There was a story there, written in the faint scars on her hands, in the careful way she adjusted her clothing, in the resilience that seemed to radiate from her every movement. He wanted to know it, to hear it, to honor it. But he also sensed that she wouldn't share easily. She had been hurt, he could tell, and he respected that. For now, all he could do was offer the silent affirmation that he was here, that he saw her, that she wasn't invisible to him, even if the world often made her feel that way. Minutes passed, the cafe filling gradually with more patrons, the soft chatter growing louder, but in their corner, a bubble of quiet intimacy had formed. She shifted in her seat, and he noticed the faint tremor in her leg as she adjusted her position. It was a small, human detail, but it spoke volumes. He didn't flinch or turn away. Instead, he offered a gentle nod, an unspoken acknowledgement of her strength and fragility intertwined. She met his gaze and smiled again, this time more confidently, as if she recognized the rare space he was offering, a place without judgment, without pity, without expectation, just presence. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, her voice wavering. I don't mean to bother you with my problems. Sometimes I need to sit somewhere, anywhere, and pretend like I belong. Her eyes glistened slightly, and he felt a pang in his chest. He had been there, in different circumstances, carrying invisible burdens and struggling to find a place where he wasn't defined by his hardships. And now, in this unexpected encounter, he realized that he wasn't alone in this. Here was someone who understood, in her own way, the quiet desperation of seeking connection amidst isolation. You're not bothering me, he said firmly, leaning forward just enough to convey sincerity. Really, and you do belong. Anyone brave enough to walk into a place like this deserves to belong, no matter what anyone else thinks. He hesitated, then added, I'm a single dad. My life's kind of a mess most days, but I know what it